Hello and welcome to another episode of Future Chat, joined by a super speedy, as usual, Mike Attrell and our laggy as hell senior contributor, Nick Maddox. We're going to try to put a good show on for you today. Mike, why don't you lead us off with some follow up on ransomware that has everyone across the UK horrified?
Is it just the UK?
The
I thought
UK
it
was
was,
pretty hard hit, but there are
yeah.
other places.
So the good news is that I can't remember if we addressed it last show, but I think by the time we had recorded, the ransomware had stopped its vicious spread.
It hadn't, yeah, it
Um,
Hi,
didn't
Rob.
spread anymore.
I'm excited to be here this week, despite the lag.
I don't know if that was comedic timing, but it was great.
Thanks. I try.
uh, so yeah, the ransomware had mostly stopped, except for those who were off the internet for the weekend and then came on Monday and unleashed the wrath of ransomware. Um, but there's now a couple, at least one, if not a couple, tools out there that actually decrypt your computer for you, as long as you haven't restarted the computer. Because I guess one of the keys, like the prime number seeds that are used to encrypt the computer, remain in the system memory. So using this tool, they're able to retrieve those numbers, and I don't know, maybe they know the encryption algorithm that was used, or they're able to reverse engineer it or whatnot. But they're able to use those memory stores to decrypt your computer. But again, it's as long as you haven't restarted, which is probably highly unlikely. Like most people generally restart if their computer is kind of all crazy. So
yeah,
but if you happen to have been hit by the ransomware and happen to not restart your computer, then you have a chance of getting it decrypted without having to pay the, I guess, $300 ransom to get your computer decrypted. So that's good news. And then in additional follow-up news, it turns out that Microsoft actually had and this is very 2020 hindsight, but they had a security patch that would have prevented this ransomware from being spread at all, if not at least not as aggressively. But again, this is for the old XP operating system, which is now 2 versions old.
it's 2 versions out of date.
Yeah, so we're on the third one since, because there's been 10, 7, and Vista.
Well, okay.
Right? No, we have to count Vista. It's technically an operating
What I
system.
mean is there's a version newer than it that has also gone out of support. So Vista has no longer supported and XP is no longer supported.
Right.
There's Vista, there's 7, there's 8, there's 8.1.
Oh, I forgot about 8.
And now there's 2.
I'm actually running 8 right now.
There's 8 and 8.1.
So
Those were
how can
2
you
different
possibly be
years.
running XP still?
That's what yeah, it was released in
Anyway.
like 2001.
So
Well, Mike, never underestimate how cheap some people can be. And by people, I mean corporations.
yeah. Granted, XP is very stable, but at this point is evidently a very high security risk because it's not getting security patched.
Big stone wheels with wooden axles are also very stable. You would never use them today, but they're very stable.
I don't think that's the same, but
Similar. So
I think we're having similar problems.
yeah,
So
I can't tell if Nick ended his sentence or if he got cut off.
I did end my sentence. I'm sorry.
Okay. I want to just point out the clickbaitiness of this second link that will be in the notes from CNET. They titled their post, Microsoft held back a free WannaCry patch, report says. And they didn't hold back a patch. They actually patched all their supported systems. It's just that XP is no longer supported.
Yeah, so like that's kind of what I got from this, was that
Right.
just the fact that they deprecated it, that's why it wasn't released for it. That's just standard
Right.
software practice. Like
yeah.
They make it sound very like, oh, Microsoft knew and decided not to release it. It's like, well, no, like they weren't supporting that system anymore.
Right.
So that's why it's a very like hindsighty type thing. Just hold on a sec.
So I'll explain. I'll give a little bit of context for this link, and then Nick, you can add your thoughts. But so it says this paragraph here says Microsoft wanted hefty fees of up to $1,000 a year from businesses for custom support. That's a very common practice with Microsoft, where if you want to use a system like XP that's gone out of its support time, you can pay Microsoft and they will support you additionally. And so it's a very deceptive kind of thing to write, because Microsoft is not the bad guy here. They're actually giving extra support. And one of the things they did in light of this WannaCry ransomware is they provided a free security update to patch this for Windows XP systems, even though it hasn't been supported for years. And I just think that that's like writing this for, it's like irresponsible reporting from CNET, because it just totally vilifies Microsoft when they actually did pretty much everything they could have here.
Well, listen, do you want clicks? Do you want them to get clicks? Because this gets them clicks.
Well, that's true. It didn't get my click, though. I'll tell you that much.
Nor mine, but that was really what I wanted to say to Mike, incidentally, so ignore that in the chat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I actually remember the first time I turned on a machine with XP.
Yep.
And I was young. I mean, obviously, but I remember it being so fast and being so impressed. And I also remember in context that was around the turn of the millennium.
Yes.
And I just have such trouble believing that at no point in the past 17 years has a corporation gone, man, we really need to update this.
Yeah, well, it is expensive. Like it's a cost. It's just that like especially government organizations in charge of health data should have that.
Well, I mean,
pay that cost.
It's a cost, yes, but there's also an associated cost with not upgrading.
Yes, exactly.
And in this case, security.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, referring specifically to the title, do you want them to get clicks? Do you? Do you not want CNET to get any click revenue? Is that what you want?
I'd be fine with that in this case.
You're a monster. Why can't you support small business?
Fair enough. So it seems like, Mike, your computer stopped recording? Or you're on mute? Or all of the above?
Wait, can anyone hear anything? Or is it just you and me, Rob?
I can hear you, Nick, and you can hear me, but Mike just looks shifty.
Okay. How about we perform the ritual of the sync clap to try and get him back?
Okay. I don't think it's gonna work.
I'm gonna take the lead on this clapping, okay?
Okay.
3, 2, 1, triplet clap.
Mike, we cannot hear you.
Did you know my claps are triplets? They've always been triplets. Dad, if you're listening, I hope that's what triplets are.
Restart. Just close the window. Just close the Hangouts window and come back. I'll just restart the window. I wonder if he pressed record or not.
So this week, Future Chat is brought to you by Kai's Cousins. Thank you for letting us stay at your place, Kai's Cousins, and also for the coffee. This is very much appreciated. So, Rob, while we wait for Mike, do you want to talk about my story?
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Because there's not really much to talk about.
Go for it.
Okay, so it's been all over the news for the past couple weeks, and it seems like that's an incredible delay in it only being there for the past couple weeks. But in a double-blind study, and we'll get to the details of the double-blind a little bit later, it has been shown that soloists cannot tell the difference between a Stradivarius and a brand new violin.
Okay.
And now, Do you know like the legend of the Stradivarius?
Yeah, I've heard like it's the one that goes for what is it, like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on for auction? Like they're extremely
Yeah,
rare and hundreds of years old.
Stradivarius worked in, I believe, the 1700s.
I hope that sound is you fact checking.
It is me fact checking live. Uh, 17th and 18th centuries. So 1600s and 1700s then.
Okay.
And so he was a legendary violin maker. They're widely regarded to be the best built and the finest sounding of all violins. And so, I mean, obviously that's why they're so valuable. And the fact also remains that Stradivarius himself only made so many violins. And now that we're a few hundred years later, that supply gets more and more and more limited as time goes on. And I mean, the inevitable march of time breaks more of them.
Yeah.
But there was some work done a little while ago. Like I want to say a couple years ago, they were dabbling with this. But there were concerns expressed that it wasn't a true double blind trial because
Okay.
you can see a difference and you can like they suggested this, but they suggested the soloist might be able to smell a difference just
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I don't know how many super old buildings you've been in, but old things definitely have a different smell.
Yeah. It's like a
Um,
musky type thing.
yeah, but like libraries and places with instruments have a specific old smell to them.
Okay.
I That's my experience anyway. But so they were just unable to tell when the person playing didn't know whether it was a Stradivarius or not, and the person listening didn't know whether or not it was a Stradivarius.
Right. It seems like you'd almost have to blindfold someone too, unless there was a
And that's
violinist
what,
that didn't know what a Stradivarius looked like. Like blind study, literally blinding the people.
yeah, they literally had to blind people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just really cool news because now you can save a lot of money. And I believe the work that's a few years old actually had people preferring newer instruments.
Which makes sense,
Now,
honestly.
does it though?
Well, there's no like we don't say that violins get better with age. There's no other musical instrument that fits that either.
I mean, that you're wrong. But
What
like,
gets better with age? I haven't heard that.
um, now obviously, like this is based purely on anecdote, but I had a cornet, which was actually I think it was a C cornet, which was odd because I was used to playing B flat
Okay.
brass instruments, but my great uncle I think played, and so we had one. But my music teacher at the time recommended that we get that one fixed up and ready to play again because um, apparently, or according to her anyway, just the years of use and the flow of the breath over the brass everywhere just creates nice sounds,
Okay.
at least according to her.
Yeah.
So there's at least that one where people value it because it's old. And I think that could also be a victim of the bias that this old thing is better. But
Right. It seems like bias, but yeah, it's hard to like that's why you need to do studies like these, I guess.
yeah, there was also, and I can't remember where exactly I heard this, but there was speculation that I think they were listening in concert halls.
Okay.
And so apparently the newer instruments are better at projecting into a concert hall, and that might be responsible for some of it. And they said you can only truly appreciate a Stradivarius when you're up close, listening to it very closely.
Okay.
Although, I mean, you be the judge
Right.
because I'm pretty sure a lot of professionals that really buy into it will say for decades to come that yes, there is a difference. You just don't have a fully trained ear if you can't tell.
Yeah. Kind of like high quality audio files and the audio files that love those audio files.
That's good use of the suffix files.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah, so
well, there's that, and like, I mean, food too. Like, you could accuse someone of having an unrefined palate.
yes. Yeah, there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
things like that where it just comes down to if the vast majority of people can't tell the difference, how much does it matter? For me, anyways.
I
always feel.
I mean, you can save a lot of money this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. And I'm genuinely most excited to see where this conversation goes in the future.
Yeah.
And if someone will be able to pound out a study with an appreciable N where there's just a randomly distributed number of answers where they finally come, or they get a study that says, yes, you can tell a difference just purely by chance.
Yep. So I guess we should let Mike back in and do another clap to sync back up. 3, 2, 1, record.
There we go.
Rob, Mike, did you have anything to add on the Stradivarius being dethroned?
I thought it was interesting. I always find these types of studies. I hear more with wine and how you can get people to give good ratings of very cheap wine. Whether that means that the cheap wine is actually good or all wine is equally bad, I don't know. But
oh man, I actually read an article on, I think it was someone who works in a store, and they said, listen, the more expensive bottle of wine is just always going to taste more expensive, or it's going to taste better because it's more expensive. So just, I don't know, do what you want.
Yeah, that's the general kind of effect, I guess, is that if when someone knows something is expensive, then they have a better appreciation for it and they'll look for things good about it. But if they know it's cheap, then they go in thinking, oh, this is a cheap whatever, and then it doesn't taste or smell or look as good or that kind of thing, right? So as far as this goes, I think it's flawed from the beginning because how good something sounds is entirely subjective. So you can't really quantify that in a scientific way. Like you could measure the waveforms and say this is a pure waveform or that kind of thing. And I'd be actually interested to see that type of study done. But as far as which one sounds better, I don't know if you can. Obviously, these guys or people can't tell the difference. So I don't know if that means that just like related to the audio quality, it's like just your ear can't pick up the differences.
All right, gentlemen, grab your mics and head to the head to the nearest symphony orchestra. We have work to do.
I'm very because it seems like with comparing this again to the high quality audio files thing, if we record to the highest bit rate we possibly can, will that difference be detectable? Like, would it be possible that different microphones can pick up different sensitivities of waveforms? Like on a bad microphone, maybe you can't tell the difference between the two violins, and on a good microphone, maybe you can. Like it's all very nuanced and very subjective.
Yeah. And then you're relying on the ear of the person listening to pick it up as well, right? So it's the double, the two types of the two receivers effect, right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I'd almost say you'd want a more complex waveform for.
I guess I agree with that. Again, but it comes down to subjectivity, right? Because some people might prefer a cleaner sound, whereas other people might, like with record players, for instance, you might want more character, and that might be that like fuller, richer sound might be more pleasing to the ear of a listener who's really paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm also like I'm thinking specifically of wind chimes when I say that, just because like a lot of chimes will be set up so that other, like if you strike one of the, oh God, what is it called? Tube? You strike one of the tubes, it will, like there will be other tubes that are on some harmonic of that. So
Yeah.
other ones will start to ring even if they haven't been struck.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You also don't want to just hear like 8-bit music, like just pure tone.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
like-
speak for
like-
yourself. Cubby's Ember is a delight, sir.
But like you're saying, you do want like that richer, fuller sound, and that's kind of why I'm wondering if there is a difference in how the violins produce that tone. Like for the same, I don't know if you call it a chord in violin music, but for
Well,
the
you
same
can't play a
note,
chord.
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
play.
right? So for the same note played on 2 violins, using an automated stroke of the quiver. I don't even know what you call bow.
Bow?
You had the
To
arrow
brush up
terms
on my-
right, but
to brush up on my violin terminology. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so you could do a semi-controlled experiment with that, I think.
So we're grabbing our mics and going to the symphony orchestra.
yeah,
Cool.
that seems fair.
It's a field trip.
Why not?
Yep. So last week, I chastised Mike for not knowing when Google I/O was because we wanted to talk about it once it had happened. And it turns out that it happened in between. It happened in between our last show and this show. So, Mike, how silly do you feel, first of all?
How silly?
Yeah, don't you feel silly? You're just so
That-
silly.
I
Not even
guess.
knowing when Google I/O was.
What are we gonna do with you, Mike?
Tell me why I should feel silly, Rob.
Well, for me personally, again, like going back to last week, I didn't care about the Amazon Echo. I'm really struggling to care about the Google Home. But so for me, it was mostly about Google Photos improvements.
Well, the
And
home
I'm-
wasn't even involved in I/O, was it? Or at
Yeah, it
least in
was.
the news that I heard.
They got a whole bunch of new stuff.
Oh, I didn't even hear about that.
You did not watch the keynote, did you?
No, I didn't. I had work to do.
Yeah, it's tough
Mike,
because
how could you?
we don't necessarily have 2 hours in the day to, like in any day, even days later, to
Yeah.
pay attention to a keynote.
Like, I'm usually okay watching an Apple keynote because it's usually well produced
Yeah.
and the people presenting are good. Like, but the last Google one I did when they released a Pixel, it's like, what are you guys even doing? It was
The-
bad.
I/O is better and it's getting better. Like it is better than it was and it's constantly improving. But I get that. Like it feels more like a series of individual presentations of things as opposed to one cohesive message in a keynote.
Yeah.
And there were definitely some weird parts. There was a part where, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the slow-mo guys on YouTube. They have slow motion cameras and they film all kinds of, like, they're just kind of like 20 something or early 30 something people who do weird stuff in slow motion and film it in slow motion. And so to show off a bunch of new features of YouTube, they invited them and then had them accept charitable donations in exchange for having water balloons thrown at them on an adjacent stage. And it's just like this presentation took 5 or 10 minutes, and it was like they're raising money for charity by like having people throw water balloons at them and then filming it and playing it back in slow-mo. But it doesn't feel like that is like helping promote YouTube in any way, or with Google I/O. Like it maybe have that as a thing, but it doesn't need to be in the keynote.
Right.
Like it's a 3 or 4 day conference. You don't need to have a 2.5 hour keynote because it has that in it.
Right.
So I get
So,
it, but there is
yeah.
Google Home stuff.
Okay. So tell us what you got out of I/O then.
Well, like I said, so the hearing about Android O was interesting. There's going to be a beta this summer again for people of the specifically like new Pixel phones, or I think the last generation of Nexus might still be able to get it. But it was mostly, for me, it was Google Photos. Like that's the thing that I use pretty much every day. And like from heard of the parts of the keynote that I listened to, and from what I've listened to and heard since, most of I/O is about machine learning. That's like they're Google's building custom hardware now. They're called tensor processing units, TPUs, and they specifically help machines learn how to learn. And so all of the updates that they have do that in some way. And so Google Photos, for instance, there's now a lot more powerful face recognition. And so they can actually, one of the things they introduced, which I'm really, really excited about, is the ability to share libraries between people. So any pictures, I can share my photo library with Julia, and she can share hers with me, and we'll see all of each other's pictures in our Google Photos. But one of the coolest features that I saw is that they actually enabled, like on a per person permission level, I can also say, allow Julia to see any pictures that have her in it or that have any number of people in it. And then not only will she be able to see my library, but she will actually have any photos that I take of her with my phone upload to her library in addition to mine.
See, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, because if the same thing happens with pictures of Emma, right? Like, I'll take a picture of her and I want Maria to be able to have it, and vice versa. But we're generally not sharing, like explicitly sharing the pictures with each other permission wise, right? And it'd be a lot of effort to either have like a common shared album that you can, like, that's another solution. But again, that's an extra step that you like take the picture, go into your photos, have to add it to that album. Like, that's a huge, well, relatively huge pain. It's a first world pain.
Yeah.
It's this, what you're describing is exactly what I'd want. It's like, I just want any picture that I take of any whatever to just, I don't want every picture I take to be shared, because I take just random pictures. I'll take screenshots, I'll take whatever. It's like, we don't need all those shared as well, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that sounds really cool to be able to set any picture with whoever in it, share it with this other person.
Yeah. Another cool thing that they introduced, it kind of seems like all around with Google Photos especially, they really considered all of the possibilities of things people would want to do with pictures on a mobile device that's shared with people on the internet and all that. They considered all of that and then made a bunch of features that really, really dial in on exactly what people would want. So another feature, when you take a bunch of photos at an event with, say, 10 people at it, it will recognize that it was a block of, say, 20 pictures taken through the space of an hour and a half. And it will recognize that that's all a block of pictures. It already kind of does that. Sometimes it'll get a smart album generated. But now once it generates that album, it will say, do you want to share the album with these people that are not tagged in the photos, but that it noticed are in the photos? And so you can say, yes, I want to share this album with those people, and pick whatever photos you want to specifically share. It will then share it with them, and they will get a notification as well saying, hey, we noticed you also took some pictures during this same time at this same place with these same people, and say, do you want to add your photos to this album? And so everyone will get that same notification if they took pictures at the event, and then everyone can contribute their photos automatically to this one cohesive album that's shared with all of them. And it's like, that is exactly what you'd want to do. Like, you want everyone to have copies of all the pictures that they were in at this event they were all at. And that's just what they did. It's just great. Like, as soon as I heard that, I was just like, wow, that's exactly what I would have wanted. When they said we were updating shared albums, we have the ability to share albums automatically with people of pictures you've taken at an event they're at. I was just like, wow, it would be so cool if it also notified the friends to upload their pictures to that same album. And then they were like, and we've also announced, and I was like, wow, my mind is blown. They actually did it.
Oh, so you thought of that before they even announced
my
it?
mind immediately went to like, oh, that's a natural extension. It's like when a character in a TV show behaves exactly the way you predict they would based on their own character. Like, you're like, wow, that's really good writing. This is really good programming, in that they thought of the natural extension of a feature, not just like, oh, we now have shared albums. They actually took it a step further.
It seems like, I'm guessing photos file naming has like a standard, kind of like the typical photo file name has the date and time in it, right?
Well, it has it in the metadata. I don't know if it necessarily always
Well,
has
usually
it
it's
in-
like, say for mine will be like, oh, screenshot underscore something else, maybe underscore, and then like 201705. Like it has the date and then like
sometimes,
a
yeah.
time in it. Every one that I've seen that I haven't renamed myself has some form of the date and time in it. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that that's how Google also knows when that
I think
photo
that's
was
just an
taken.
Android thing. Because with iOS, they're just named like IMG underscore and then a number like 00852.
Is
Like,
it?
and then they're named sequentially, but
Oh,
the
okay.
metadata has the time and date
Okay.
information.
Regardless, I guess they're still able to tell when photos are taken.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good to be able to cross reference with other people. Even like you're
Yeah.
saying, it's like, oh, they infer that it's the same event, and they can
Yeah.
they'll say, oh, do you want to share it as well? Which is that's really cool. Is kind of like what we hoped. I don't even know what they called it, like the photo party thing.
Photo.
I don't know that we tried.
Oh yeah,
when
we
you
did try it.
Yeah, we create like an event, and then it's like, oh, take your photos, and then
Yeah.
anytime you take a photo, it gets shared to that event.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same thing, but I think there's a lot of friction with that.
Yeah,
This
there's a lot
one's-
more for sure.
Yeah, this seems a bit better for just post sharing and then being able to kind of gather all those photos after the fact.
Yeah. One of the cool things about the Google Photos thing is that if you try to share it with someone and they don't have the Google Photos app, it can even send them a link via SMS to allow them to see the album. And so it incentivizes people like, oh, I should connect my Google Photos account. Oh, I should download the Google Photos app because then I get all this, instead of just being like, okay, I have to figure out which of my contacts have Google Photos installed, which one have it set up properly. It shares it and then kind of in a frictionless way gently pushes people towards installing it and using it.
I really like that Google Photos is cross-platform.
Mm.
Like obviously iPhoto isn't, or Apple Photos or iPhoto Cloud, whatever they call it now. And
None of those are right, by the way. All of those
right,
guesses
but
are wrong.
a lot of people use Dropbox for photo backups and all that kind of stuff, but there isn't that integration and social sharing aspect with Dropbox. Like
They did have that with Carousel
well,
a little bit, but nobody used
did
it.
anyone know about Carousel?
I did, but
I think I had it downloaded, and then I'm like, I've never used this app before, and then it got uninstalled. But that's what's great about Google Photos, that it's cross-platform and it has that social sharing aspect. And I like, at least on Android, it gives your memories every so often. It does its animation, compilation, collages. Like they're semi gimmicky, some of them, but it's kind of nice. It's a little bit of an extra thing. It's like I'm only using it for just general backup, and anything else can be bonus, I guess.
Yep. Nick, do you use Google Photos at all?
Yes.
And similar experiences echoed and used so far?
I'll be honest, I wasn't paying attention.
Fair enough.
I zoned out.
Needless to say,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. Like Mike was saying, he didn't even watch the keynote. And so
why should I have to listen to it now that Mike hasn't even watched the keynote?
No, it's like we said with SpaceX technology. I still find myself very excited by these things, and so I pay more attention. Like I'm willing to dedicate a couple of hours to watch all the things that have happened, but it is becoming kind of so commonplace that you are able to think of something that's basically magic and kind of go, oh, all right, I'll maybe pay attention once it matters to me, but right now it doesn't. And I actually kind of like that about technology, because not everyone should have to pay attention to it all the time. It should just kind of continue to improve on its own.
I think a big thing about new features and just new technology in general, that it has to be very non-intimidating to be widely adopted. Because if something seems difficult or creepy, regardless of how useful it is, people aren't going to be wanting to get involved or use it.
Yeah.
But this kind of thing, like, facial recognition that is kind of creepy when you think about it. But people have accepted it. That's like a regular thing. It's like this machine knows that that's a picture of me or whoever. So to be able to use that to identify who's in a picture and share it with them, that is frictionless and is technology that is easily accepted as being okay. It's not, you know, I can't even think of an example, but it's not the kind of thing where people would be averse to using it.
Right. And
right.
The Google Photos app now has, I think it already came out on Android as well as iOS. When you go to search for some pictures, it'll actually pull up a row of faces.
Yeah.
And it doesn't tag the faces as anybody. It just shows you the people you have pictures of. And you can search based on one picture of someone, you can search for all the other pictures of that person you have. And it's a much nicer way. Like, you are able to tag those photos with names, but it doesn't infer who people are. It just infers that all these pictures are of one person.
Yeah, and ultimately, when this feature comes out, if it's not already out, they'll have to attach a name and an account to those people in the pictures.
Yeah,
I'm assuming, like, it's not just going to know that a picture of me is attached to my account and prompt people to share it with me, even if they don't have me as a contact or haven't identified that person as me. Right.
Yeah. Totally agree. So, was there anything that you did hear about or see at I/O that you wanted to discuss, or do you want to move back in time to the build and talk a bit about that conference?
The main thing was this Google Photos thing that I heard about. I also heard about, and apparently this was a feature that already existed, but with Android O, being able to, what is essentially 3D touching, at least perform the same action or end result in Android on an app icon, bringing up a secondary menu, I guess, or quick actions.
Like a right-click menu.
Yeah. Which I think is cool, but apparently that's already a thing. So my phone's still on Marshmallow. So
yeah, it's gotten more powerful, but it was a thing.
Yeah,
it has been a thing.
What was the new thing about this
they added
one?
Notifications to it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They also, I love that we often get accused, like when you go back and forth between Android and iOS, there are often accusations of people copying other features. And one of the things Android introduced in Android O is notification dots. So the app icon will get a dot next to it if there's new notifications for it. And I was just like, Android has always seemed like they go a very different direction. So instead of doing that notification thing on the icon itself on the home screen, they would put a little icon up in the top status bar. And now they're introducing a visual way to see, if you look at your home screen, you can see which apps have things you might want to check out. And along with that, one of the things that they did is, if you now hold long press on an icon, it will pop up not only actions, but it'll show you the notifications for that app. So it is a very interesting way to use that secondary menu to give you an easier way to check your notifications, as opposed to having to go into each app to see.
The Samsung, what's their launcher called?
The launcher?
TouchWiz. The TouchWiz.
Oh yeah, the interface. Yeah.
They have the notification badges for apps already. Like, my phone does that. So it shows, it's like a number. So it'll be like 1, 2, 3, whatever.
What's after that?
4.
4? Okay.
Yeah. It continues to increase from there. Actually, I don't know what the max is, by like 99 plus or whatever.
Yeah.
So that isn't new, but I guess maybe if they're integrating that into the stock OS.
Yeah, it's new to Android itself.
Yeah. Well, to the stock launcher.
It's not a badge. It's just like a colored circle that the color of which is influenced by the app icon. Sorry?
I fail to see the difference.
Well, there's no number, so you just know that there is either there are notifications.
So it's just a badge without a number. It's still a badge.
Right, but I mean, it doesn't have the number of notifications. It's still a badge. You're right.
It's fine. Yeah. Yeah. And I actually have found that useful. Like, at first I'm like, well, it just clutters my screen, but sometimes I'll like swipe away notification or accidentally swipe it away, and then I can't if I come back to my phone, then I can't tell there's a notification there.
Yeah.
So if it still remains in the actual app icon, then that helps to remember, even if my actual notification center bar has been swiped away.
Yeah. It's really hard. And that's one of those things that I can't wait for, like, machine brain interfaces to come in, because sometimes you really want a notification to stay in the notification bar, even if you've opened the app and kind of looked at it. But other times you will have 50 notifications in your window and you don't want any of them, or you want like 3 of them interspersed throughout, but there's no easy way to be like, keep this, and this one.
Yeah.
You just either have to get rid of all of them or delete them one by one.
I want to be able to snooze notifications.
I think that's one of the things in Android O as well.
Is it? Oh, good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Because I found that really good with my inbox.
Yeah.
Is being able to snooze. Because I'll often do that for like reminding me for when I get home, or when I'm just about to leave work, so that I remember to do something on the way home or once I get home. Or for the next morning when I get to work or whatever. Like I'll just snooze it until I want to actually take care of it. But if I swipe it away, then I'll just forget that it's there. And pinning it is the same thing. If I pin it and I don't actually go back to the app, then that doesn't help. So snoozing is nice.
Yeah. The actually Google Inbox also got it's one of those things that you don't really think about, like snoozing notifications. Inbox is a super powerful email app that at least Mike and I use, and you can actually save links to Inbox and then like snooze links, which I find.
You said that before. I still don't know how you're doing that. You'll have to show me sometime.
You can do it like if you open on your phone, or like Chrome has it as well. Chrome has an extension for Inbox. All you have to do is share the link, whatever URL, and one of the options in the sharing center will be send to Inbox.
Oh.
It does. But it seems like Inbox is still a testing ground for Gmail, because people aren't necessarily fully switching, even though like I never open the Gmail app anymore. The smart replies that came to Inbox last year, the middle of last year, using machine learning to gauge like one-line quick responses that you might want to send to an email, those have now made their way to the Gmail app. And so on one hand, I'm excited that the Gmail app is getting those features as well, but it means that Inbox hasn't taken off with the general population as much as we might have expected it to.
I don't know.
So it might go away.
It's more like it's Gmail Pro, right? It's like power users of Gmail will typically be using Inbox.
Right.
So it makes sense that they test features on the power users, find out which are the most widely adopted or easy to use, and apply those to Gmail.
Right.
Right.
I was listening to a podcast, I think it was Download, and somebody was saying that they use Gmail's priority inbox, and they're like, they absolutely love it. And even though Google hasn't talked about it that much, I was like, priority inbox is like the very first step towards inbox. And just use inbox. It's way better. It's like priority inbox on steroids. It's only priority inbox.
Right.
There's no other inboxes.
I find that priority inbox, it's not very, I don't know what customizable is the word.
It's not as customizable as inbox.
Yeah, inbox is a lot more straightforward as far as like grouping, and then you can set the behaviors for each group. I don't like just saying, oh, this is a priority email, this is not, because it's not that simple, right?
Yeah. Completely agree.
Nick, do you use inbox?
Yeah.
He tuned out again.
I found one of the most useful features I find is being able to set any like promo emails to all come in bundled all together at a specific time.
Yeah.
So every day at 7 a.m., I get my promo bundle, and then I just clear it all at once. Like I'll scan through to see if I want to open any, and then just clear them all at once, instead of having them come in throughout the day and interrupt me. And like, oh, that's just another flyer or whatever.
I did not realize that was an option.
Yeah. No, I think Nick, or Rob, I think you told me about that, about being able to set them all to come in at the same time.
And you can do that with any
any bundle. Yeah.
So you don't have to get disrupted by, if you get Twitter or Facebook emails like a monster, you can set them all to come to one bundle and only have that show up once a day.
Rob, was that a pun?
Solid.
Like
Yes.
a monster?
That's not a pun. That was not an intentional thing. Yeah. So
I could see Amon doing that though. Getting
oh yeah,
Facebook.
he has definitely said that before. So Mike, did you want to change gears and talk a little bit about a couple weeks ago's Build conference?
Yes, I do. Actually, I first want to talk about how Microsoft has actually been doing good things. They've been shown in positive light in the news. Actually, pretty much since the Surface, what was it? The Surface Pro,
the Surface Book.
What was the one? What was the table thing?
Oh, the Surface Studio.
Surface Studio. Yeah. So that was like the first thing. Is like, wow, Microsoft is doing stuff again.
Mhm.
And then Apple people were like, wow, that's actually cool. And then the Surface laptop was like, oh, this is the MacBook Air that we always wanted. Like, so yeah, they released a Surface laptop. So they've branded it Surface, the same as their hybrid tablet line. But this is just a straight up laptop that's comparable specs to. Is it comparable to the MacBook Pro, or is it just a regular?
No, it's
MacBook?
Comparable to the Air, I would say.
Is it?
You can scale it up, but it's like it starts off pretty low end. Like it starts off basically not a Chromebook, but like a MacBook Air for sure.
Okay.
Or a MacBook.
And you can spec it up to just the base level MacBook. Is that the idea?
I think you can spec it up to probably low end MacBook Pros.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless, it's just a premium PC laptop, which admittedly, like Samsung and HP and Lenovo, like all those companies still make varying degrees of premium laptops.
Yeah,
but a Microsoft one hasn't existed
ever.
Ever?
Oh, I guess the Pro did. It was that.
Well, was that a laptop or is that a Surface?
The Surface, I guess so. You're right.
Yeah, that was a Surface. Like just a hinged
right,
computer.
Just a regular laptop.
They had like the Surface was their first branded PC.
Yes.
And then this is the first branded PC laptop. So, and it's got good reception so far, and it kind of fills that gap of a trusted manufacturer that will hopefully be designed with the operating system in mind and not leave stuff to be desired, I guess. And is a direct competitor with the MacBook Air, which was updated, not updated, I guess, this last time around with the Escape.
It was not updated at all.
I mean, the Air itself is done, but they've replaced it with, I think, is what the Escape is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In theory.
There's nothing else that would fill that gap.
Yeah.
So obviously Mac versus PC, but this is spec wise, this is kind of filling that gap. So Microsoft is back in the game, I guess.
Yeah.
To say the least, which is good to see. So shortly following that, they had their build conference and they talked about a couple of things. I think you're probably better to talk about the graph.
Yeah. So
feature.
this appealed to me on a deep level because it seems very Apple-like on a level that even Apple hasn't tried yet. So what the Microsoft Graph basically is, and maybe I'm not describing this fully, but at least the capability of the Microsoft Graph that I was most interested in is the ability to have the things you are doing on your computers sync between them. So activity that you do carrying through, and kind of like the way that Chrome works is you have a list of tabs, and you can, if you sign your computers up to your Google account, you can go to any one of your Chrome instances and see what tabs you have open on your other devices and open them quickly. And Microsoft introduced basically a way to do that with Windows, with iOS, and with Android, as long as you're using Microsoft apps. And so on your Windows desktop, or on your, like, using the Cortana app on Android or iOS, you can go back and look at kind of a linear history of the things that you have been working on, like whether they're PowerPoint documents, whether they're Excel, Word documents, whether they're web pages, you will, or whether they're clipboard entries, you can go and say you're working on a PowerPoint presentation on your home computer and you are on the go and you want to make a couple quick tweaks to it on your phone. You can open up the graph, see that document you were last working on, open it straight from there. And then so you don't have to like kind of dig around for things you were just recently doing. It kind of remembers the context of you on multiple devices. It's a similar idea to continuity, which Apple has, but it's very much, continuity is very much second to second. Like I'd have to be on my computer with a program open, grab my phone right then while it's still open, and I can switch directly to that same context, but there's no memory later. Like I could never, with iOS or with Apple's products, I could never be playing a playlist on my computer and then pick up where I left off from that playlist on the music app on my phone. That it doesn't remember that context. But what Microsoft is promising to do with Graph is to at least be able to let developers have those hooks in their apps for cross-platform to be able to be like, hey, you were just doing this. Do you want to now do this on this other computer? And I'm very, very interested to see how that looks, because it's the kind of thing that Apple, I think, could do really well, but they haven't done anything like that yet, other than that kind of one-to-one, second-to-second. I want to open this on my other thing because it's already open on this one thing.
So is that the intent? So, okay, to recap, this works in its current form with Office apps, right? Like Microsoft apps.
Like the Microsoft right? Store apps.
Okay. So you're saying that the idea is to open it up so that whatever messaging app that I have both on my PC and my Android phone will be able to hook into the Graph as well? Is that the idea, to say on your PC you were in this conversation, now you can resume on your Android phone?
Back to it, yeah. So without needing to, it's like having in my mind, it's like having a reverse chronological list of your notifications that you can, like a history of what things you've been doing, to be able to jump right back to them, as opposed to having to navigate back to that same spot through like opening an app, selecting the context on the different device, going back to that document, going back to that conversation, whatever it is, having a list of recent things you've done and being able to just jump right back into them.
Right. I think what you said at the beginning about it being kind of like Chrome, like the way Chrome behaves right now, that's probably a good way to think about it, because that's my experience with continuity, is being able to do something on my home computer or on my phone, then go to work and be like, oh, was that site I was on? And then it'll be in my history or whatever. Like that's a very simplistic implementation of literal history. But that's kind of the same effect that you can do with anything like documents or apps or whatever you might want to plug into it.
So I'm very eager, because like we mentioned with Google Photos, cross-platform is kind of the killer feature now for a lot of our uses. And Microsoft's been taking a ton of steps to say, hey, we really like Android and iOS. Like, use Android and iOS by all means. We can't really compete with our Windows Mobile, but we will allow you to actually use Microsoft computers, a PC, with those smartphones. And I think that's kind of a really smart idea. One of the other things they introduced is being able to develop, well, they've been doing it for a while, but making it better, being able to develop and test iOS apps on Microsoft computers. And so you don't necessarily need Xcode on your Mac to be able to develop a cross-platform app. Whereas before you could develop all kinds of stuff for Windows Phone or for Android on your Windows PC, but if you wanted to develop an iOS version, you need a Mac, and a lot of apps tend to be iOS first, and so it's like, okay, well, we need a Mac. I guess as an afterthought, we'll also get the ability to download, and there are now a bunch of different platforms, like developer interfaces, to be able to do that. But Microsoft is partnering with ones like, I think they actually bought the development interface Xamarin, and that's one of the ones that does cross-platform stuff. So like they're heavily investing in the ability for people to develop on iOS without needing to use a Mac, like being able to do it with a PC. Very intrigued. Although I am eagerly awaiting what Apple announces, because it kind of seems like they're having to play catch up now. They're
As it relates to
behind
the
in a lot of ways.
continuity feature.
In all the ways, like in all the things we talked about
Right.
today, Apple is not as good as the other companies. Like I really like iOS because these other companies, these other big companies, are catering to Apple and Apple users. But in terms of their own software itself, other than the platform, like other than the operating system, all they're offering is a really good operating system and the ability to run apps. That's the strength of the platform to me. It's not the features that they themselves offer in their own apps.
Right. Yeah, you rely on the developers.
Yeah.
To release stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my main. Takeaway from Windows, the Microsoft build. The other big thing that they did, if Google focused a lot on machine learning, Build focused a ton on HoloLens, virtual reality, augmented reality. And I was also very interested to see that, because it kind of seems like for the first time in a long time, I had that thought of, wow, there are people on Earth right now who are living in such a more advanced technological world than me, using HoloLens to develop things. And usually I'm the person that's like, oh, cool, that just got announced. I can go do that now. And now it's kind of like with all this new technology, it's very much targeting businesses that are specifically needing these more advanced technologies like virtual reality technology. And it's unfamiliar.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if they talked about HoloLens at all. What is the current status of that development?
Basically, it went down the same route, or so far it's gone down the same route that Google Glass ended up, where there are maybe certain very specific applications, or not very specific, but specific applications that can really benefit from it. So one of the things they had was on stage, they showed a demo of the team from Cirque du Soleil using HoloLens devices to be able to visually represent in three-dimensional space how, like, the building of their stages, staging of the performers, kind of, they're able to virtually see and scale exactly what they're going to do when they're building their shows, as opposed to having to build sets months in advance in order to plan things out. They can kind of plan things in 3D and see what they actually look like without having to build them first. And so it makes creating a Cirque du Soleil show much more, like, a lot cheaper, first of all, because you don't actually have to build the sets right away. It lets you plan out the things and do it faster and in a less expensive way.
Right. I think another good application of that would be in like construction and, landscaping and renos and that kind of stuff, where you're interfacing. Say you're a project manager, you're interfacing with your workers to tell, let them know how to do things, what to do, where to put things. And then you have customers that want to know what it's going to look like, right? And say, make decisions on what to choose and that kind of thing. So I think that could go a long way, where, you have a couple people on the headsets and they don't have to be in the same place, right? Like they just have to plug into the same, one person on site doing all the manipulation, or like giving that background image, and the other people can do the manipulation within that environment, right? Like I'm assuming that's how it could work, right? Like it shouldn't have to all be entirely augmented. It can be a virtual reality for some people, where they're getting the camera feed from one person and then still being able to interact with that environment.
Right. Yeah, they had a couple of examples. They had one of the big flight companies, I forget if it was Boeing or like, I'm trying to remember the other name, but so it was a big flight company. They were doing their training as opposed to having
Airbus.
Maybe they're having to train as opposed to having to take apart, like decommission or take offline different aircraft to teach people about how the engines go together. They're able to use HoloLens to kind of virtually deconstruct the engine and show people in real space what parts go where and how they work and why and all that, without having to actually take aircraft offline. and they had like a restaurateur building their restaurant and arranging tables and being able to actually see how these things work out. One of the other things, like you mentioned being able to work together. They had 3 Cirque du Soleil presenters, and they had one person that they had a bunch of pre-built shapes that they were going to be placing in this demo. And one person would go, okay, now I'm going to grab this column and I'm going to put columns here, here, and here. And then the second presenter would go and grab the column they just placed and then like tweak it and move it and rotate it. And you're kind of able to work together in the same space. And I just like, it struck me as so removed from what our everyday computing experience is, but it's like, that's so awesome. And I see so many applications for technology like that.
Yeah. Because as it stands right now, all you can do to get anywhere close to that is have, A, B together, and then have like basically a piece of paper and say, oh, this is what I was thinking. You draw it out and then say, oh no, this is what I was thinking, and then erase it and then put your own thing. It's like, that's crazy. Like, why are we still doing that? And I think that's the gap that this can fill, I think, is allowing people to collaborate on that kind of thing very easily and seamlessly.
Yeah.
And again, like it's very specific applications. Like you're not going to walk around 24/7 with the HoloLens. Like, right. I don't think that's Google Glass, I think, was trying to be that.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a market for that. And that's where, if Google Glass is even still being worked on, is in the
right.
it's in the enterprise or just industry applications.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of reminds me of going back to Google I/O for a minute. In addition to the machine learning they did for photos, they also introduced a bunch of new features for Google Assistant, including bringing it to iOS and bringing it to older phones with Android. I forget if it's with Android O or if it's just an update that they're coming to older Android phones now. But with the whole machine learning thing and going back to Google Glass, they basically took the best part of Google Glass out of the eyewear and put it in the phone's camera. So they introduced Google Lens. I don't know if you heard anything about this, Mike, but basically it's an extension of Google Goggles, which they've been working on for a while. It incorporates things like Word Lens, which is able to translate text on the fly.
That's pretty cool. I've used that before.
Yeah. So basically what this is it's Google Glass mixed with Google Goggles, mixed with Word Lens, all on steroids. So you can, if you're walking around let's say a downtown street you've never been on, you may think like, oh, what restaurants are good around here? And you can actually now, with a combination of geolocation and camera awareness, along with kind of street view, you can point your camera phone at anything, basically ask, what is this? Or like, give me more information about this. And so if you point your camera at a restaurant, it will be like, oh, that's this restaurant, and here's the menu, and here's when it's open, and like you can book a table right now if you want. You can point it at, they use an example of a marquee on a concert hall. I guess it's not called a concert hall if you're like playing rock music there, but so there was a band playing show at their sign was on the marquee along with the time and date that the show was happening. So they pointed the camera at the marquee and it pulled out the information and like gave a Ticketmaster link and like the dates, the times of the show. And so it's basically, without having to do a Google search after you see things, it'll pull out the relevant information from the actual environment and automatically generate all of the information you need. And yeah, so Google Lens is coming at least to the Pixels, like with updates shortly. I'm very, very excited that if you're going to see anything, like if there's anything worth seeing, as opposed to just kind of hearing about it through recap videos or articles, it's the demonstrations they did with Google Lens. I guess they weren't really demonstrations, but the showing off the power of the Google kind of cloud infrastructure with real-time like visual machine learning. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, like you said, that's basically Google Glass without the glasses.
Yeah. Another feature, like the dumbest thing, it takes no time, but if you can have a computer do it for you, it's way better. A router that has the SSID and password printed on it, you can just go scan, like point the Lens application at those things and it will automatically connect you to the Wi-Fi. Like it's just, there's all these things that machine learning can make so much
That
easier.
would be super helpful.
Yeah. And
You
like
can already
every
do that.
example was like that. It was just like, oh, that's such a cool example. And like, it's so much less work than having to manually type it out.
You can already do that with NFC tags, can't you?
You can, but that requires NFC and like there's already like WPS is a protocol that lets
Yeah.
you basically press a button and connect any wireless device that's nearby to a network. But being able to do it in such a seamless way, just by basically having the phone read the information, it doesn't have to actually get input from you. It just goes,
Right.
what's the information? Oh, here it is. I'm going to enter it. Now you're connected.
I've been curious to start trying NFC tags a bit more. Like maybe they might be more limited than I think, but I kind of see them as useful as Excel macro buttons.
Yeah.
Possibly. And you might have to use a couple different apps, at least like Tasker probably for a lot of that kind of stuff. But even then, like say for my like house alarm, it'd be nice if I could have an NFC tag by the door and just put my phone up to it and then it arms the house or turns off my lights if I had Wi-Fi lights or whatever, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? But I don't know how capable. You might be relying more on app capability versus being able to just throw NFC tags on everything.
Right.
But
that's one of the things where it seems like automated things can do a better job, because in theory you shouldn't need NFC tags. You should just be able to program, like an NFC tag requires you to actually go over to the thing and hit it. Whereas if it was properly automated, you would just press a button.
But
like
ideally,
you would have to be in physical proximity to the sensor.
Right. But ideally, these are things that you'd be near anyway. So say for like a Wi-Fi connection, if you had people like friends over all the time, I guess ideally once you're logged in, then they just remember the networks. They don't have to re-enter the credentials. But you know, you could have an NFC tag by the door or in the living room, whatever. Say, oh, just put your NFC there and you'll get connected, right? So, and it's kind of like, oh, I'll get so much visiting done with that. Like, yeah, I think you expect to use it a lot more than you actually would. But I think the idea of it is kind of cool if it does work that way.
Yeah. There are definitely a lot of things like that that could or should be easier. Like one of the things, like you kind of want to have security with a Wi-Fi router. So you don't necessarily want a Wi-Fi router to have a built-in NFC chip that lets you like tap to connect. That's one of the things that the Apple TV does automatically, is that when you bring the remote close to the TV, it will just sync with it. And then like for the first time when you're setting it up, it will just sync and be like, oh, what is it? It's not the remote. No, sorry. If you're connected to Wi-Fi with the Apple TV or with your phone and you want to set up the Wi-Fi with the Apple TV, you just go and you can bring your phone over to it and basically like tap, and it will transfer the Wi-Fi credentials. And there are things like that where it's like there's security and there's convenience. And if someone's going to be able to tap your Wi-Fi router, they should probably be able to access the credentials. Like unless you specifically don't want that, but then why would you give someone you don't want to have access to your router physical access to your router?
Right.
So yeah, it's always a trade-off, but it seems like in these cases, the trade-off could be more convenience, less security. But I'm very excited nevertheless.
Me too.
I'm glad.
Did we finish early? Is there anything else we want to talk about? Oh, actually, you know what we should do? Because we're early, Nick, I'm assuming you didn't read anything about Svalbard that we posted in the chat.
That is correct. Although I have a quick, 2-minute story to discuss with you guys too.
Sure.
That I forgot to post.
Okay.
The world has a new hottest chili. it clocks in at about 2.5 million Scoville heat units,
Okay.
dethroning the Carolina Reaper, which was at around 1.5.
Oh
I
wow.
think.
So this is more than double?
Is it linear scale?
Wow.
It
Right. So, I mean, like, is something with twice as many units actually twice as hot? Like, is that how that works?
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
it will
However,
it
you
will have
quantify heat. Yeah.
twice as much, and it's normalized for weight, so it's twice as much
Okay.
capsaicin.
I believe, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way they measure Scoville units, it's the amount that's needed. It's like parts per million in like a big tub of water, right? That you can still detect it.
The original definition, as proposed by Scoville himself, was that, and it's not parts per million, as I understand it. It's the amount by which use of the pepper has to be diluted by syrup, such
Okay.
that you can't taste the heat anymore.
Right.
Like parts per unit pepper.
It's
Ish.
it's a concentration of the concentrated pepper juice, but it's not directly
So like,
concentration. It's like 1/4 concentration, kind of.
Like, you need 2.5
yes, I
million
think.
times the amount
Yeah.
of pepper juice to not detect
Exactly.
it anymore.
Or you'd need to dilute it by that factor to
Right,
not
yeah.
taste it anymore.
Yeah.
Although, like now, because that's so heavily subjective, they've kind of taken standard Scoville heat unit definitions and converted it to like an HPLC system,
Okay.
which stands for either high performance liquid chromatography or high pressure liquid chromatography. But
Right.
it's effectively the same thing. It's just high pressure yields high performance, and that's why they call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not actually like a story that yields much discussion. It's just they've bred a new one. They will probably breed one after that. I believe this one, they were actually breeding it for like just capsaicin yield for medical purposes, because capsaicin can be used as a topical ointment
Right.
for like arthritis and things like that. It's just don't touch your eyes or genitals after applying the ointment.
So, while this is great for medicine, the real winners are the hot wing industry. I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
Marketing, really? But I don't know if you. Now I'm gonna go off on a rant here, but have you had like anything that's been branded ghost pepper in the last couple of years from a fast food chain?
I've seen them. I haven't had any though.
You know what? Go ahead, because it's not that hot. Like, I think they've used ghost pepper somewhere in the process. They've like dropped one
Right.
into a giant vat of something. And they're like, this technically has ghost pepper in it. And then they go ahead and market it that way.
Right.
Like it's not hot in the least usually. There's a Miss Renfro's salsa, which is pretty hot, but that's about it. Like having eaten actual slices of ghost pepper on things like pizza and McDoubles, I can tell you it's nowhere near the heat.
Now, Nick, being the pepper expert of the show, do these
Expert?
Pexpert, definitely.
pep expert, do these different peppers taste different, or is it literally just they're hotter than each other, but generally the same taste?
Yeah, they do taste different. I say this from having eaten several of them raw. But not only that, like they do have different tastes to them, but they also have different heat profiles. So like a popular maybe, I don't know. An example is the Thai chili versus something like the habanero, where It's actually interesting because all the East Asian hot peppers are descended from the New World pepper, or the New World pepper seeds that were brought over, and they just started to evolve in a different environment.
Mhm.
So I think the way they describe it is the Thai chili has more of a tingly spice to it. Like you kind of feel it as pins and needles on your tongue, or that's how they describe it anyway. Whereas the habanero yields a more whole mouth kind of heat to it.
Mm.
And like another example is I grow Caribbean red Caribbean red habaneros, which they have a very, very fruity flavor to them, which is part of the reason I like them so much, because there is that flavor past the spice that you can't necessarily get anywhere else,
Right.
like culinarily speaking. And that one has a very sharp attack to it, and then it kind of like lets you go. Whereas something like the ghost pepper, it has more of a slow build heat to it. And I think that's just because it's not just pure capsaicin in the pepper, which is why the Scoville heat unit is kind of like, it might be, I mean, for as subjective a thing as they're trying to measure, it might be a bad measure just because it doesn't necessarily equate to how you feel when you're eating a pepper.
Hmm.
So like the ghost pepper is a slow build and takes a while for you to fully realize what you've just done to yourself, whereas the Caribbean red, once you bite into it, that's about as bad as it's going to get.
So I'm more of like a pepper casual. So
Okay.
my only exposure to peppers is generally either on Subway sandwiches or like sauce, like
Delicious
sriracha.
options, both.
Oh, I definitely agree. I'm just saying, as far as biting into peppers to experience the taste, I don't have that type of exposure. Uh, so like comparing like Tabasco to sriracha to jalapeno or banana peppers, like all those different ones had different flavors. Obviously, the sauces have garlic and tomato or whatever that's added to the sauce to give it flavor, but
Yeah.
generally like the pepperiness has different flavors. So I guess that's kind of what I was wondering with respect to these other kind of more pure forms of pepper experience. Like, I mean, like jalapenos and banana peppers are fairly, you can pretty easily tell the difference even when they're not in a sauce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does a similar thing exist for these other like extreme types of peppers, or is it generally just general pain and degrees of pain when you eat them?
Well, I mean, I think part of it depends on your tolerance to the capsaicin as you bite into them,
Mm.
or how far it's diluted. Because, I mean, if you're the type of person who doesn't usually put black pepper on things because you find that too spicy, you're probably not going to be able to taste the difference because it's just going to be so overwhelming to
I
you.
think that's Rob.
For sure, me.
I actually realized that as I was mid description. But yeah, so there are different flavors to it. Like the Caribbean red is very fruity. The ghost pepper, it's been described as almost a perfumey kind of, like almost floral flavor to it. And
Hmm.
every, I could be wrong, but every review I heard of the Carolina Reaper was that it is just really hot, but it actually kind of tastes bad. Like people didn't like the flavor of it. At which point I don't know why you'd use the Carolina Reaper rather than just 1.5 times the amount of ghost pepper if
Right,
it tastes better objectively.
right. To get the same amount
But
of heat.
yeah.
Right.
So I mean I would rather just use, because once you get to that level, like they're all breeding them to be in the millions. So you could just as easily use 1.5 times something that tastes good rather than
Right.
just using 1 unit of something that doesn't taste good.
Sure. Do most of these get used in things like chili when like people try different types of peppers in chili?
Um, I mean, yeah, people use them in chili. if you're going pro style, a lot of people will use a mixture of fresh and smoked chilies in chili just to get different layers of flavor.
Sure.
The hot sauce industry will also experience a boom with, and various marketing things that will put out dragon breath fries, which are not actually that spicy, but had a dragon breath pepper in there at some point.
Salsa
Now-
too, I imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Nick, you keep mentioning dragon breath, and I understand that pulse is also a type of vegetable. Is there any dragon pulse peppers?
Not that I know of,
Wouldn't it just be
Okay.
dragon
but that might be a
pulses?
GMO. That
Yeah.
might be a GMO project for the future.
Okay, makes sense.
I will
I
also
imagine-
mention.
I'm surprised. Is dragon breath a legacy pepper now?
I'm not sure what the joke is here.
You obviously missed Rob's joke initially as well.
Yeah.
then.
Clearly, I'm sorry.
Just think Pokemon.
Dragon Pulse. Oh, man, that did take me a while. Whew. Not enough coffee.
It's all I could think
Um,
about, but I understand that you were thinking in a completely different context. So it's
Nick
Fair
doesn't
enough.
joke about peppers.
True story. The other thing I will mention that you will see a lot of people saying that it's a potentially fatal pepper to eat. But the reason is that the original press release warned shock
oh
because
wow,
that's just a standard thing to warn people about.
right.
But
Have you seen those videos
news
of
organization. Sorry? Wow, this is a lot of dead air. So a lot of news organizations originally, like, they just latched onto that and said it could kill you if you eat it, but it's like, if you eat anything, it could kill you.
Yeah.
You could just go into anaphylactic shock for some random reason.
I was going to ask if you've seen those videos of generally their kids just eating peppers and filling themselves while doing so.
Oh yeah,
That's apparently a thing that people
That's
do.
definitely a thing.
it is.
Maybe that's what you two should have
I've
had
also
on.
eaten peppers, and I've also eaten peppers and had people film me of their own accord. I didn't
Right.
ask them to; they just did.
Right.
It's a thing.
Yeah, but you're not doing it for the views, Nick. You're not doing it for the clicks.
No, I was doing it for the experience. Also, ice cream tastes so much better if it's, putting out a pepper fire.
That's probably true.
It's
I can actually
definitely
get on
true.
board with that.
So
So
Rob's gonna have some black pepper, and then let that burn for a minute or so,
I'll have some
and then
Chipotle
put out the
mayo.
fire with ice cream. Ooh, bold.
Some very dilute Chipotle mayo. I'll put 1 drop of Chipotle mayo in mayo.
that's- You could market that, Rob.
Yeah. Super Taster's spiciness.
Is that what you're calling yourself?
That's the word.
Okay, Rob.
I detect spice when they're
We'll go
when
with
it's
that,
undetectable to most people.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Apparently.
It's good for me because I can eat the blandest food and be totally satisfied. So
Ah,
we have to wrap up for the week.
That sounds like such a white thing to say.
We have to wrap up for the week, but I want to take at least 30 seconds and just, I'm going to post a link. I'm posted in the chat. I'm going to post it in the show notes. Nick didn't read about Svalbard flooding, the global seed bank. It's not like flooded, but there was some flooding that occurred in the entranceway.
that's
And
awful.
it's really like, it's not a good sign for the users. I assume you're still like, Mike did not take this seriously at all, and I tried to get Nick to come and back me up in the chat, and he never actually did because he's been enjoying his life and his weekend. But Svalbard flooding, go read about it because
Oh, it
Like-
flooded. It
Climate change-
definitely flooded.
Climate change is real. Mike is not disputing that. And the sign that our backup of like basically the world's agriculture is potentially going to be flooding soon on a regular basis is not good news for like global agricultural stability.
Wait, Rob, you said it flooded. Now you're saying it could flood. Wait, which one is it?
It did. The entranceway did, like, there was some flooding, but the actual seed vault itself, it was not breached by this flooding.
This is like the Empire State Building argument, Rob.
How?
Did you go to the Empire State Building if you only went to the lobby?
Well, no, in that case, then it did flood.
I just watched that episode of How I Met Your Mother too.
So absolutely did.
Okay.
The seed vault flooded. The secure portion of the vault is kept colder than the rest of it, and so the water froze before it got there. But like the permafrost that was supposed to theoretically on like human timescales not ever melt is now melting, and we might need a backup for our backup very soon. Just
have they consulted Backblaze?
They have not. I don't think.
Oh, geez.
I mean, like sending it to space might work, like having it orbit, having a seed vault orbit.
That's actually a really good idea. You can
protect terrible idea.
Becoming mutant seeds.
As an off-planet. Mike, don't. This is how supervillains get born. Seed man. As in terms of off-planet backup, like it would be good to have, but it is an objectively terrible idea to send all our seeds to space because they'll just, like, if that satellite crashes, it's done. Like, it's very unstable.
There's so much radiation.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, depending on how you shield it.
Right. You'd have to shield it. But like, if you don't want genetically modified organisms, don't send them to space.
We just finished talking about
that's like
red peppers. That's GMOs at its
Peppers.
finest. Yeah.
Actually, I don't think the peppers get like laboratory GMO'd. It's all breeding as far as I know.
Well, from what I hear, it's all bad. So
it is all bad. Peppers are all bad.
I think they're tasty.
Okay, I got that off my chest. Nick, you should
read the article. How could you say such things?
Everyone else should read the article from Quartz or whatever source you so choose that has a story about Svalbard. But it's not like devastating.
I just found one from Wired.
Horrible yet, but a sign of bad things to come. Another sign of.
Okay, so we can discuss that on an upcoming episode entitled "Well, Shit."
Yeah, basically. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Future Chat. I sincerely hope you did not listen live because your experience will be horribly broken. And you can head to unwindmedia.com/futurechat for past episodes of the show. And we'll see you next week.
Ciao.
Hello.